Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. I'd love to know. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, let's jump in. For a long, long time, the galaxy was ruled by fear. Not the kind of fear that makes you hide under your bed, but the kind that made entire planets vanish without a sound. Great alien empires floated above the stars like dark clouds. They didn't care about peace or kindness or fairness. They only cared about power. If you were small and weak, you stayed quiet. If you asked for help, they laughed. And if you fought back, you were erased. These alien overlords were not friends. They were monsters in shiny armor, wearing fake smiles and hiding weapons behind their backs. Every year they grew stronger. They sent out ships with weapons big enough to blow up moons. They made deals, broke promises, and watched as the little planets bowed their heads. No one could stop them, not even the ones who tried. People whispered in dark corners about heroes who might rise one day, but those were just stories, old tales for children. In the real galaxy, the strong ruled and the weak disappeared. And so the empires grew fatter, louder, and meaner. They thought they would rule forever. They thought they were safe. But they were wrong. No one remembered the humans anymore. They had disappeared from the maps, vanished from the charts, and slipped out of the galaxy's memory, like a dream no one could quite recall. Once, long ago, humanity had been part of the Great Galactic Council, just another strange little species trying to find its place among the stars. But they didn't fit. They didn't follow the rules. They didn't disarm when they were told. They didn't bow when ordered. And worst of all, they asked too many questions. So the council got rid of them. They called it exile, a polite word for throwing someone out. Too violent, they said. Too wild. Too unpredictable. Humans smiled when they fought. That scared people. They didn't just build ships. They turned them into weapons. They didn't just study war. They practiced it over and over until they got good. Too good. So the galaxy decided to move on without them. No one saw where they went. No one asked. No one cared. Time passed. Wars came and went. Empires rose and crumbled. But Earth stayed quiet. Too quiet. And then, one day, something changed. It started as a whisper. A single strange signal picked up by an old patrol beacon near the edge of known space. Nothing more than static at first, then a glitch, a shadow across a scanner, a moment of silence too long to be accidental. At first, the council ignored it. Sensor malfunction, they said. Background noise. But the shadow came again, this time bigger, sharper, like something was watching. Something waiting. Then a name appeared, just for a second, burned into the transmission like a scar. HSS Vengeance. The message didn't say hello. It didn't ask for permission. It didn't request landing codes or send a translator drone. It just existed, like a ghost from a forgotten past. The council's records didn't recognize the signature. The archives came up blank, but the oldest captains, the ones with battle scars and shaky hands, remembered. Their eyes went wide. Their mouths went dry. "They're back," one of them whispered. "The humans." The room fell silent. And in that silence, across the stars, something began to move. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but the countdown had already started. Far beyond the Council's carefully drawn borders, beyond the trade routes and the monitored systems, a small planet named Kier 4 trembled under dark skies. It wasn't famous. It wasn't rich. It wasn't even well defended. It was just a speck, just another stop for freighters moving cargo between more important places. The Council didn't protect planets like Kier 4. Not anymore. Not since the Drexer arrived. They came without warning. Giant ships that looked like insect hives stitched together with metal and rage. They didn't conquer. They consumed. Their cannons didn't leave survivors. Their scanners didn't ask questions. Every warning that tried to escape from a doomed planet ended the same way, with 3 final words, barely whispered through static. Run. They're here. And now they were above Kier 4. A mothership as big as a moon blotted out the stars. Its weapons glowed with heat. Its engines hummed with hunger. Civilians ran for underground shelters, their screams swallowed by the roar of engines that promised only death. No help was coming. No rescue fleets. No council defenders. Kier 4 had been abandoned. But then, something changed. For a moment, the Drexer ship's scanners glitched, just a flicker, like a shadow passing too fast to catch. Then again, stronger, sharper. The scanners froze. Then a new reading appeared. Unclassified vessel detected. No council ID, no known origin. The mothership hesitated. Then, from the blackness of space, a shape emerged. Long, black, silent. It didn't glow. It didn't announce itself. It cut through space like a blade held too tightly in a closed fist. And across its hull, scratched into old armor and half hidden by battle scars, were 2 words. HSS Vengeance. The Drexer didn't understand. They had no record of such a ship. No idea what species could build something like that. They paused, but only for a moment. Then, as always, they charged weapons. A warning flash, a signal, stand down or be erased. The Vengeance didn't respond. It fired. Not lasers, not plasma bolts, not anything the Council had ever regulated or understood. This was older, angrier, a weapon so dense it made the stars blink. A single shot lit up the sky and slammed into the Drexer mothership like a hammer dropped from the edge of time. The shields cracked, not strained, not flickered, cracked. Like glass under pressure, it was never built to hold. And for the first time in the Drexer's terrible reign, they didn't finish their attack. They ran. The galaxy watched in shock. A battle that should have ended in flames had flipped in seconds. The footage spread faster than any virus. Systems across the stars replayed the moment over and over. That ship, that name. Humans. The whispers returned, louder now. Not myths, not rumors. Desperate, panicked voices filled with awe and fear. Find the humans. We need them. If they have more ships like that. But the humans didn't answer. The Vengeance didn't send another message. Didn't wait for praise or questions. It simply turned, slid back into the shadows between stars, and vanished. Like it had never been there at all. The galaxy had always feared the Drexer. But now, the Drexer were afraid. And that changed everything. At first, the Council tried to pretend it hadn't happened. They called the footage unverified, claimed it was heavily edited, just another panic hoax spreading through fringe systems. But it was too late for lies. Everyone had seen it. The massive Drexer mothership turning tail and fleeing like a wounded beast, chased off by a single black warship with no insignia. Just one name burned into its side like a promise: vengeance. For species that had never known hope, that moment meant everything. And for the Drexer, who had never known fear, it meant something worse. Back in their hive-controlled sectors, deep in their biomechanical fortress ships, things began to shift. The Overmind, cold, calculating, ancient, paused its usual broadcast to the swarm. It replayed the footage, over and over. It slowed the image, measured the energy signature of the weapon, calculated the shield failure of the mothership, assessed the recoil wave, the damage radius, the unknown alloys. Something didn't add up. Something had changed. The Drexer weren't used to unpredictability. Every enemy they'd ever faced followed patterns, predictable strategies, logical responses. But humans weren't logical. They were a mess, a wildfire with a mind. The Overmind didn't understand it. And what it didn't understand, it feared. It sent a single directive across its network, a silent pulse that traveled through every Drexer ship, through every hive node, through the minds of the living and the wired. Track the warship, capture it, dissect it, understand it. But the vengeance was already gone. Far out in the dead zone, beyond the edge of any trade route or council-regulated space, it drifted silently beneath the shadow of a shattered moon. Damaged, but alive. Hidden. Waiting. Inside, the lights flickered. The air buzzed with the hum of old wires and half-repaired circuits. Walls bore scorch marks. Blood stained the steel floor. This wasn't a ship made for comfort. It was made for war, and for surviving it. At the center, in the captain's seat, sat Commander Vale. She didn't look like a legend. Her uniform was torn. Her eyes were tired. Her voice was a gravelly rasp, shaped by years of recycled air and too many battles no one ever recorded. But her hands were steady, her mind sharp. She wasn't a politician. She wasn't a symbol. She was a weapon. She watched the battle recording from Kier 4 for the 10th time. Not because she needed to, but because she was studying, calculating, preparing. Behind her, her tactical officer, Jin, scanned the console. Still no word from Earth, he muttered. No reply. No acknowledgement. Same silence as before. Vale didn't even flinch. Of course not. Typical. That was the thing about humanity. When the council had kicked them out all those years ago, tossed them aside like trash, they hadn't begged to stay. They had disappeared, shut off all their satellites, burned their signals, went dark, and then they waited. While the rest of the galaxy traded weapons for peace treaties, humans buried theirs, not to forget, but to sharpen them, quietly, secretly. They hadn't disarmed, not really. And now, they were watching, just like Vale was watching the stars outside her broken window, cold, distant, and full of questions. Then Jin spoke again, voice sharper now. Ping on the long-range scanners, multiple ships, Drexer signature. Vale's jaw tightened. How many? 14. No mothership. But there's a Reaver class. Heavy recon dot. She stood slowly. So, they're sending dogs to sniff us out. Jin's fingers danced across the console. What are your orders? Vale looked out the window. The stars blinked back. Let them sniff. The vengeance powered up, quietly. No cloak this time, no hiding. It stayed in open space, like bait, waiting. The Drexer fleet closed in like wolves around a wounded beast. Their ships didn't glide. They crawled. Sharp, jagged frames cut through space with purpose. They didn't send messages. They didn't ask questions. The only signal they broadcast was a single pulse, repeated again and again in standard galactic code. Stand down. Prepare for capture. The Vengeance didn't respond. Inside, Commander Vale stood at the center of the dim bridge. Lights flickered above her. The floor buzzed under her boots as the ship's ancient systems roared to life. Consoles glowed red with warnings. Damage reports flooded the interface. But she didn't care. None of it mattered. This wasn't a negotiation. She leaned toward the comms panel. Jin, play the message. He blinked. The message? The one I recorded after Cure 4. It's time. Jin nodded slowly. His fingers moved over the console, calling up the file. A red light flashed. The channel opened. Across the vacuum of space, through every Drexer ship, the voice echoed. It was distorted, human, sharp with anger, heavy with something older than rage, resolve. To the Drexer overmind. You wanted to conquer? You should have checked under the bed before waking the monster. You want war? You just found it. Silence followed. Heavy. Thick like gravity. Then Vale gave a single order. Fire. The Vengeance's rail core activated. The ship shook. The spine of the vessel glowed hot, drawing every last drop of power into the cannon. Then it screamed, a howl of pure energy compressed into a single, impossibly dense round. The shot hit the Reaver-class ship dead center. It didn't slow. It didn't ricochet. It went straight through. The vessel split in half with a flash of white-hot light, pieces tumbling away like broken toys in a bathtub. The shockwave tore two more Drexer ships apart. The rest scattered, but Vale didn't chase them. She couldn't. The Vengeance was already overheating. She'd fired their second and final railcore round. She didn't have ammo for another stand. But that wasn't the point. She didn't need to destroy the fleet. She needed them to run, and they did. Let them run back to their overmind. Let them report what they'd seen. Let them tell the swarm the truth. Humans weren't just back. They were hunting. On the edge of space, far from the smoke and wreckage, the Drexer fleet regrouped. They limped back through the stars, shields flickering, hulls cracked, neural links buzzing with pain and confusion. The overmind received the data. Every detail, every second. It ran the footage through 1,000 models. And then something rare happened. It paused, not for thought, not for strategy, but for something deeper, something ancient. Instinct. The Vengeance was a single ship, outdated, damaged, short on ammo. But it had done the impossible. It had won. It had shattered one of their elite recon ships, something no other vessel had managed to do in years of conquest. This wasn't a fluke. This wasn't luck. This was humanity, and they had changed. The overmind pulsed a signal through the hive. Emergency override. Every scout drone, every war beast, every spliced assassin, all redirected. A new directive surged through the swarm. Prioritize Sector 12, Kier 4, track the human warship, discover where they've been, discover what they've become. The Drexer sent the Reavers, not just ships, creatures, genetically engineered assassins, designed in vats of fire and toxin, fast, silent, deadly, built for one purpose: to eliminate anything the Overmind feared. But when the Reavers arrived at the coordinates, the vengeance was already gone. Out in the dark beyond the border of mapped space, where signals died and stars flickered out like forgotten candles, it drifted once again, hidden in the black. Commander Vale sat on the bridge, staring at the stars. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes burned with exhaustion. "Jin," she said quietly, "check systems. We're not done." He looked up. Still no signal from Earth. She leaned back, watching the stars blink like slow, ancient eyes. "That's okay," she said. "They'll come when they're ready." And deep below the surface of a forgotten, ash-covered planet orbiting a dying star, the real story of humanity began to stir. Because Earth was not gone. It had never been gone. It had only been waiting. Far beneath the charred crust of Earth, past the ruins and dust left for wandering eyes, the truth pulsed like a hidden heart. Humanity had never disappeared. They had gone underground, literally. After the Council exiled them, the leaders of Earth made a final brutal decision: vanish from history, bury the world in silence, and prepare. No signals, no broadcasts, no cries for help, just stillness. The surface was left scorched, abandoned, a trap for curious drones or enemy eyes. But beneath it all, deep beneath, it thrived. They called it the Cradle. A city the size of continents, carved in secret under Earth's mantle, built from neutronium steel and forgotten science. Laboratories, hangars, training grounds, a fleet. A species reborn for one single purpose: not to survive, but to outlast. And now, the time for waiting was over. Inside the cradle, alarm lights blinked red. Sirens pulsed softly in the low ceilings. At the center of a war room the size of a cathedral, holograms of the galaxy rotated in silence. Flashes of red zones, Drexer-occupied territories, entire sectors swallowed in darkness. But in the middle of it all, a single, blinking blue dot. The Vengeance. "She made contact," said General Reeves, a war relic built from steel and scars. His lungs hissed with artificial breath. One of his eyes clicked with cybernetic targeting glass. Commander Vale struck and survived. Across the room, Minister Tari nodded once. Still no word from the Council. "Radio silence," Reeves said. "Or shame." A long pause. Then Tari leaned forward. "It's time, then." Reeves nodded. "Yes. No more hiding." He turned to the wall behind him, raised a hand, and spoke just 2 words. "Activate fleet." All across the cradle, buried hangars awoke. Ancient warships, names carved in old languages and remembered by none but ghosts, lit up with golden energy. Shipyards the size of cities roared to life. Sparks danced across steel hulls. Engines rumbled, like sleeping giants waking up hungry. Above ground, Earth's moon shifted. It cracked open, revealing Lunabase 1, not a moon, but a fortress disguised as one. Cannons uncoiled like dragon spines. Missile towers rotated into position. From within the moon itself, launch bays opened. One after another, the ships began to rise. HSS Warlord, HSS Emberclaw, HSS Ghost Hammer, HSS Final Dawn. And at the center of it all, the biggest warship ever forged by human hands, HSS Retribution, a city-sized monolith, dark as night, built to destroy the unbreakable. In orbit, Commander Vale, bloodied, bandaged, and back on her feet, stood on the bridge of the Retribution, flanked by officers from dozens of systems. Not all were human. Some were council defectors. Others were soldiers from forgotten races who had watched Earth burn and now stood ready to follow her into war. Across the galaxy, alien factions who once shunned humanity now sent envoys, ships, and soldiers. Not just in apology, but in alliance. They had seen the warship. They had seen the Drexer retreat. And they had made a decision. If the humans could fight back, maybe they all could. But the Drexer weren't finished. Not even close. On the edge of known space, the Overmind stirred. For the first time in its long, merciless existence, it calculated something it had never considered. Loss. The human threat was no longer small. It was spreading. It was growing. And so, the Overmind played its final card. The Hollow Star. A weapon, a hive, a planet-sized abomination of flesh and steel. It had no engine. It devoured gravity to move. Entire solar systems had vanished into its mass. It had been hidden, locked away, for fear even the Drexer might be consumed by it. But now, nothing mattered more than erasing Earth. The Hollow Star arrived with the silence of a god holding its breath. It loomed over the edge of the solar system, eclipsing Neptune's pale glow. Its surface rippled with lightning. Tendrils as wide as cities stretched across space. And in every ship, in every mind, in every species, one word rang out, not in language, but in pressure. Submit. No one did. Vale stood tall on the bridge of the Retribution. At her side, her old crew. In front of her, hundreds of allied warships. Behind her, the last hope of the galaxy. "This isn't about Earth," she said, voice calm over the fleet's open channel. "This is about every planet they've burned, every voice they silenced, every species they thought was too small to fight back." She raised her hand. "Let's show them we were never small." The Allied fleet charged. Wave after wave of ships collided with the Hollow Star. Lasers burned. Railguns fired. Alien plasma danced like firelight across its armored skin. The Hollow Star responded, silent, monstrous, swallowing whole cruisers like insects. But they kept coming. Then came Earth's final move. A prototype weapon, the last secret, the Soul Lance, a beam cannon powered by the sun's own corona, hidden for decades beneath the Vengeance 2, waiting for one chance. Vale gave the command. Fire. The beam ignited. It lanced through the Hollow Star's armor, carving into its neural core. The creature screamed, not in sound, but in space itself. Reality bent, gravity cracked, light tore away from its center, and then it imploded. The Hollow Star collapsed into itself, folding like a dying star, vanishing in a flash of white, so bright the universe blinked. Silence followed. Not peace. Silence. The kind that comes when every species, every sensor, every ship in the galaxy stops to breathe. The Drexer swarm had ended. On the bridge of the Retribution, Commander Vale leaned forward, bruised, broken, but alive. "It's over," whispered Jin. Vale didn't respond. She looked at the stars, now quiet, now listening. Then she said, "No." It's just beginning. Because peace wasn't the end of war. It was the promise that if war came again, humanity would be waiting.